There are stories in the Bible that seem to whisper from deep within, and one of the most moving is the story of Leah. What you will discover today about her silent struggle, her longing to be seen, and the love she never received will surprise you. Her name holds revelations that will change the way you understand personal worth. This story can shed light on wounds many never speak about. Leave us a comment telling us where you're watching from, and share your prayer of the day or your favorite verse to bless others. Thank you for supporting this space. Haran was a place filled with trade, large families, and decisions shaped by ancient customs. That is where Leah grew up, always behind Rachel, who drew attention effortlessly. Leah quickly learned to live with the feeling of not fully fitting in. Although no one spoke about it openly, she sensed that her presence often went unnoticed, as if her life were a forgotten corner in a home that never felt entirely like hers. In those days, appearance carried tremendous weight. People spoke of Rachel with admiration, while little was said about Leah. Her gentle eyes were interpreted in unfair ways, and that shaped a timidity that became her shield. Under the care of Laban, a practical and calculating man, Leah learned to live cautiously, keeping emotions that no one ever asked her to share. That is where the wound began, one that would accompany her through much of her story. Everything changed when Jacob arrived seeking refuge and family. His strength, determination, and the story he carried made him impossible to ignore. Rachel captured his attention from the very first moment, and the entire household noticed the spark. Leah watched silently, feeling something inside her shrink. Sometimes the heart understands before the mind does. She knew that affection would not be for her, and so begins the same pain many live with today, without saying a word. Jacob decided to work 7 years for Rachel, a gesture that filled some with excitement and others with questions. For Leah, each day confirmed a distance she could not bridge. She served with dedication, helped in everything, but her name remained rarely mentioned. That feeling of giving everything and still not being seen is more common today than many imagine, yet the story was moving toward a turn no one expected, not even Leah. The glances between Jacob and Rachel became part of the home's atmosphere. Everyone noticed them, even Leah, though she tried not to show it. Some nights, as the camp quieted, she heard laughter that did not belong to her. That prolonged silence wrapped around her like a reminder that her story seemed written on a second line. But God never leaves a forgotten heart without an answer in his timing. Laban, always shrewd, saw how Jacob's work enriched his fields. He knew Rachel was his family's treasure and did not plan to let her go without securing an advantage. It was then that he began forming a plan that would inevitably change the course of both sisters. Leah sensed strange movements, half-spoken words, tense gestures. Life, she thought, is sometimes decided without asking the ones who feel the most. When the day of the agreement arrived, Jacob spoke with determination. He would work 7 more years if it meant having Rachel by his side. Leah heard those words from a cautious distance, feeling a part of herself grow smaller. It wasn't Jacob's fault, but it hurts when affection seems reserved only for others. That feeling still follows many today, the sense of not being anyone's first choice. The night of celebration drew near. Lamps were lit, songs filled the air, and veils covered the faces according to custom. Leah felt her pulse quicken as she heard footsteps and murmurs. The heavy veil hid her identity. She knew what was about to happen, knew she was not the woman Jacob expected, and yet she walked forward. Sometimes life places us in moments where the soul wishes it could refuse, and yet we keep moving. Jacob welcomed the woman he believed to be Rachel, never imagining the truth. The silence inside the tent grew dense, and Leah, her heart trembling, kept every thought to herself. She had not deceived him, yet the pain of occupying a place that was not meant for her marked that night. When dawn arrived and Jacob saw the truth, The shock echoed through the entire household. Nothing would ever be the same from that day on. Jacob stepped out of the tent with a tense face and a conflicted heart. He demanded explanations, and Laban answered with calculated calm. In their culture, the older sister had to marry first. Those words fell over Leah like a shadow. She hadn't been chosen. She had been positioned. That is a pain many understand today, ending up somewhere not because of love, but because of someone else's convenience. Rachel watched the scene in disbelief, and Leah felt a weight in her chest that is hard to describe. She had not asked for that night or that role, yet now she carried both. Jacob, hurt by the deceit, agreed to a new arrangement to marry Rachel as well. Leah found herself caught between a legitimate union and a heart that did not embrace her. Life can be harsh when it gives you a title, but not the affection that should come with it. The wedding with Rachel took place days later, and Leah saw the household celebrate again, this time with a joy her own day never had. Her presence seemed like an uncomfortable reminder in the midst of the festivities. She smiled out of courtesy, but inside, her voice faded. Sometimes the absence of words does not mean peace, but an emotional exhaustion the environment cannot see. And even then, God remained attentive to her story. When both sisters began living under the same roof, the contrast became unmistakable. Rachel received attention, glances, and words Leah had never heard. Jacob approached her naturally, while Leah learned to measure her steps so she wouldn't be a burden. That dynamic, quiet yet painful, marked the first days of their marriage. Many today know that pain, living close, feeling distant. Then one of the most revealing moments in Scripture occurs. The Lord saw that Leah was unloved, Genesis 29:31. It doesn't say she voiced it aloud or demanded justice. It simply says, God saw. That detail changes everything. When no one chose her, heaven did. And when her heart seemed to lose strength, the divine gaze opened a path that would change her destiny. The first gift God gave Leah was motherhood. When she learned she was expecting a child, a mix of surprise and hope filled her. For the first time, she felt something good was being given to her personally. As she held her belly, she imagined that maybe, through this child, Jacob would finally see her differently. There are moments when the heart tries to believe that a blessing can repair years of silence. When her son was born, Leah named him Reuben, saying, "The Lord has seen my affliction." She did not speak her pain to anyone else. She let the name speak for her. She hoped Jacob would understand the message hidden in that gesture, but his eyes continued to turn toward Rachel. Even so, Leah did not extinguish her hope. Sometimes faith is held by a single thread, yet even that thread can be seen by God. As time passed, Jacob's affection did not change, and Leah once again felt the familiar distance she knew so well. Yet God came close to her life again with another son. She named him Simeon, saying, "The Lord heard that I was unloved." Each name was a prayer turned into a voice, a reminder that even if Jacob did not hear her, heaven did. Her faith grew in the midst of her own tears. Leah conceived again, and the birth of Levi marked a new longing. Now my husband will become attached to me. It was a desire as human as it was sincere. She longed for belonging, closeness, a real place in Jacob's heart. That same longing exists today in those who fight to be valued. With time, Leah had a fourth son and named him Judah, saying, "This time I will praise the Lord." Something had changed within her. She no longer sought affirmation from Jacob, but strength from God. This birth was more than joy. It was a profound declaration. Her identity would not depend on the gaze of a man. As she spoke that name, she unknowingly stepped into the lineage of the future king and of the Savior himself. As Leah raised her children, the household lived in a tension everyone sensed, but no one admitted aloud. Rachel remained the center of Jacob's attention, and her beauty continued to draw admiration. But motherhood had given Leah a small place of comfort. Still, her heart kept asking why affection seemed so distant for her. Nothing hurts more than loving and not being loved in return. Rachel, meanwhile, faced her own battle. She could not bear children. That absence filled her with frustration, and her gaze toward Leah shifted between sadness, jealousy, and discontent. Leah's children became silent witnesses to an atmosphere heavy with emotion. Between the two sisters, a quiet rivalry formed, where every gesture seemed like an attempt to reclaim a place in Jacob's heart. In the midst of that tension, God remained attentive. Every step Leah took revealed a resilience no one acknowledged. She did not raise her voice, but she raised her children. She did not demand love, but she offered care. That constant devotion revealed a type of strength the world often overlooks. Sometimes the heroes of a home do not make noise. They simply hold everything together while their soul fights to remain steady. Rachel, desperate to become a mother, made a drastic decision. She gave her maid Bilhah to Jacob so she could bear children through her. Leah watched the scene with a mixture of surprise and a pain she could not fully explain. Seeing the competition grow, not out of affection but out of insecurity, reminded her that life in that household would never be simple. When the human heart is afraid, it often reaches for quick solutions. In response, Leah did something similar. She gave her maid Zilpah so that Jacob could also have children through her. The names Gad and Asher were born from that moment, marked by expressions of fortune and joy. Yet deep down, Leah knew that no child born out of rivalry can heal the wounds of the soul. It was then she understood that her worth should not depend on competition, but on resting in the gaze of God. As time passed, the tension between the two sisters reached one of its most memorable moments, the episode of the mandrakes. Reuben, Leah's son, found those plants, which were considered valuable in that era. He brought them to his mother with innocent intentions, unaware that they would become the center of an emotionally charged exchange. Sometimes, even the simplest gesture can reveal old wounds. When Rachel saw the mandrakes, she approached Leah with a tone that mixed longing and urgency. She asked for the plants as if they held a long-awaited hope. Leah responded with an honesty she had carried within for years. "Is it not enough that you have taken my husband? Must you also take my son's mandrakes?" Her words were not an attack, but the expression of a heart tired of giving way. That exchange revealed a truth both had avoided admitting. Behind the rivalry, there was pain on both sides. Rachel longed for a chance to become a mother, and Leah longed to feel she had a real place in Jacob's heart. The scene, though tense, exposed how often people fight for things they cannot control. That same struggle exists today in those who yearn for what time seems to withhold. That night, Jacob stayed with Leah, and from that union, Issachar was born. His name carried the idea of reward, as if heaven had acknowledged the silent devotion of that woman. Leah did not view this birth as a victory over her sister, but as a brief breath of relief in a complicated journey. Sometimes God grants small glimmers of comfort to remind us we have not been forgotten. With the birth of Zebulun, Leah expressed her deepest longing. "Now my husband will honor me." She wasn't asking for greatness, only respect, closeness, and a rightful place in Jacob's heart. It was a longing as human as it was sincere. Yet Jacob's gaze continued to favor Rachel. Leah understood that her worth could not depend on affection she did not receive. Even so, her heart continued seeking comfort in God. Sometime later, Leah had a daughter named Dinah. Although Scripture gives few details about her early years, the arrival of a girl brought a different kind of tenderness into the home. Leah held her with special care, like someone embracing an uncertain future. In her daughter's eyes, she saw a reflection of herself, a life that would need to learn how to walk in a world that does not always recognize the value of women. Despite her children, Leah continued living in a home where every gesture seemed measured by comparison. Jacob dedicated more attention to Rachel, and that difference weighed heavily. Yet amid daily responsibilities and the growth of her children, Leah built an inner space where faith became her refuge. Sometimes, when human affection is limited, one learns to hold on to what truly remains. As the two sisters lived together, the atmosphere shifted day by day. Not everything was hostility. There were moments of shared silence in which both seemed to understand that their struggles came from different places. Leah knew Rachel suffered because of her long wait, and Rachel knew Leah carried the weight of unreturned love. The home was a blend of joys, tensions, and gestures that kept everyone constantly aware. Then came the moment when God also heard Rachel's cry, and she was finally able to conceive. When Joseph was born, the joy in the household was unmistakable. Leah received him with a mix of gladness and nostalgia, realizing that her sister's story was taking a turn she herself had once dreamed of. That is how life often works. Another person's blessing can awaken both gratitude and quiet questions. The birth of Joseph marked an important transition. Jacob began to speak of returning to the land God had promised him. Leah listened to that plan with hope, imagining a future where she might find a place less burdened by comparison. What she didn't know was that the journey ahead would move not only tense, but also deep emotions that had been still for many years. When Jacob finally gathered his family to depart, Leah watched each child prepare with excitement. She had spent years feeling as though her life was defined by comparison, but this journey awakened in her something new, the possibility of beginning another chapter. Although Jacob's affection had not changed, Leah held on to the thought that perhaps in a new land her soul would breathe with more freedom. The caravan moved slowly across the dry paths. Surrounded by her children, Leah felt that the distance between her and Rachel softened at times. Perhaps it was fatigue or simply the act of walking toward the unknown, but both seemed to share a silent understanding. They could not keep carrying eternal wounds. Sometimes outward journeys reveal the inward ones we have avoided for years. When Jacob announced that Esau was coming to meet him, the atmosphere shifted instantly. Fear mingled with uncertainty, and Leah took her children's hands, feeling the weight of responsibility grow heavier. She knew Jacob's history with his brother was intense, but she trusted that God would protect their family. In that moment, her faith became her invisible shield. As Esau approached with his men, Jacob arranged his family in groups. Leah moved forward with her children behind the maidservants and ahead of Rachel, as was the patriarchal custom. Although that order reminded her of the differences in affection, Leah kept her steps steady. She did not want her children to see fear in her face. There are moments when courage is born not from applause, but from the need to support those who depend on us. When Esau finally arrived, there was no conflict. Instead of anger, there was an embrace. Leah watched the scene with relief, sensing that heaven had intervened once again. Her children, who expected tension, saw peace. Sometimes God resolves battles we do not know how to face. For Leah, that encounter was a quiet confirmation that even though her path had been difficult, she did not walk it alone. After the encounter with Esau, the family continued moving toward the promised land. Leah walked with a new calm, as if each step released a little of the weight she had carried for years. It wasn't that her story had suddenly changed, but she felt God giving her small reminders that He was still with her. Sometimes peace arrives in fragments, like a gentle breeze after a long night. As they settled near Shechem, life began to take on a different rhythm. The children ran through the fields, and the tents filled with daily activity. Leah sought moments to reflect, watching her children grow, each with a distinct personality. They had been her comfort in difficult days, and now they were her strength. Nothing connects a mother to her purpose more than seeing her children begin to shape their own stories. It was during those days that Dinah, her daughter, began exploring beyond the camp. Leah watched her with a mixture of pride and natural concern. She knew the outside world had its risks, but she also understood that no one can stop a child's growth. Times were changing, and Dinah represented a new chapter in Leah's life, one that would bring challenges and lessons she could not yet imagine. Although Scripture does not describe Leah's private life in detail during this period, we can imagine her finding small spaces of rest in the midst of her duties. Preparing food, tending animals, caring for her children. Those tasks kept her busy, but also gave her a sense of stability. Deep inside, she still longed for affection that never came, though she had learned not to depend on it in order to live. With the passing days, Jacob began speaking about continuing their journey. Leah felt that each move brought her a little closer to understanding her place in the story. She had been wounded, overlooked, and compared, but she had also been protected, blessed, and strengthened. That balance between pain and purpose walked with her always. Quietly, she thanked God for giving her the ability to remain steady, even when her heart felt fragile. When Jacob decided to break camp once more, the news spread quickly. Leah gathered her belongings with calm awareness, understanding that every transition was part of a larger plan. It wasn't just a change of location, it was a change of season. She looked at her children and felt grateful for raising them amid so many challenges. They were living proof that God had placed beauty in the middle of exhaustion. The journey continued through uneven terrain, across hills and plains. Leah walked close to her children, making sure the pace did not overwhelm them. During those long stretches, she remembered all she had lived through, nights of uncertainty, days of comparison, and silences that seemed endless. Yet she also remembered how God had strengthened her at the exact moments she thought she had nothing left. Memory can become a refuge. As the caravan moved on, Leah watched the bond between Jacob and Rachel remain strong. Though that reality still caused a quiet ache within her, she no longer saw it the same way. She had learned that human affection does not always follow fairness or merit. Sometimes it simply flows where it chooses. Even so, her faith taught her that God had not overlooked her and that her life held a place within His divine purpose. In certain camps along the journey, Leah found moments to talk with her older sons. Reuben, Simeon, and Levi asked her questions about the past, about what life was like before Jacob arrived. She answered carefully, without filling her words with bitterness. She knew that the story of a home is also built with the silences we choose to keep. Protecting her children's hearts mattered more than releasing her own pain. During one of those stretches, Jacob built an offering and thanked God for guiding him. Leah watched the scene from a distance, feeling a knot rise in her throat. Not because she was excluded, but because she understood how much had changed since that first night when she had not been chosen. There, as the smoke rose toward the sky, she knew her life would not be remembered for rejection, but for the faithfulness she carried despite everything. As they continued forward, the bond between Leah's sons became more apparent. They formed a close, protective, almost instinctive group. Leah noticed this with pride, knowing that although she had not received the love she longed for, she had planted loyalty and strength in her children. Every step they took was also a step of her own, as if life wanted to remind her that her legacy was born along dusty, quiet roads. The journey grew heavier as the family approached Bethel. It was there that Jacob built an altar, honoring the God who had been with him since his youth. Leah watched silently, sensing that this act was also a confirmation for her. If God had guided Jacob through his path, He had also guided her through her inner battles. Sometimes the closeness of someone else's faith strengthens our own. In that place, Leah remembered every chapter of her story, the days in Haran, the unexpected wedding, the looks of comparison, and the children God had given her. These were not easy memories, but they no longer hurt as they once did. She had grown in more ways than one, learning to surrender to God what she could never solve on her own. That quiet redemption is one of the deepest victories in a human life. As they prepared to continue their journey, the weather began to shift. Clouds moved quickly, and a cold breeze swept through the camp. Leah watched her children hurry with the preparations, and for a moment felt the fragility of time. Life's seasons pass quickly. Some leave marks, others bring rest. She realized her story was no longer defined by her first wound, but by what God had built out of it. In the midst of the march, Jacob gathered everyone to announce that they would continue toward Ephrath. Leah sensed that something significant was approaching, though she did not know what. She had learned to recognize those moments when life seems to take an unexpected turn. The only certainty was that God would continue to be with them. And in that awareness, there was a unique peace, a peace born from years of trusting even when the heart had been fractured. The road to Ephrath became more demanding. The ground was uneven and the days grew longer, but Leah kept pace beside her children. Each stretch seemed to remind her that her life had always been a blend of burden and purpose. She did not know what awaited them ahead, but she trusted that God continued guiding her story. That trust, cultivated through tears, had become her greatest treasure. As they continued forward, Rachel began showing signs of exhaustion. Her pregnancy had advanced, and the movement of the journey made each step more difficult. Leah watched her discreetly, remembering how fragile they all truly were beneath their differences. For the first time in a long while, she felt sincere compassion for her sister. Rivalry faded in the presence of a life about to enter the world. The following days were filled with uncertainty. Rachel needed to stop frequently, and Jacob grew anxious, unsure how to balance the journey with the care of his family. Leah, from her quiet place, helped wherever she could. She prepared water, adjusted loads, tended to the children. It was her way of serving without seeking recognition. Some people love in silence, yet the impact of that love is immense. When they finally approached Ephrath, the exhaustion was unmistakable. Rachel began experiencing stronger pains, and the caravan came to a halt. Leah stayed nearby, attentive to the movement among the women assisting her sister. Though their history had been complex, this moment demanded setting competition aside. There are circumstances that rise above old wounds and reveal what truly matters. We are all fragile before God. The childbirth became difficult quickly. Voices inside the tent sounded tense, and Jacob paced outside with a worried face. Leah listened to every sound, aware that something serious was unfolding. Regardless of their past, what was happening inside that tent touched the entire family. In that moment, she lifted a silent prayer, asking God to sustain her sister and the child on the way. Rachel's cries pierced the camp, and everyone understood how critical the moment was. The women assisting her did everything they could, but the tension was unmistakable. Leah stood with her hands clasped, feeling an indescribable weight in her chest. Though her past with Rachel had been complicated, her heart broke as she listened. Sometimes another's suffering awakens a deeper empathy than any past alliance. In the midst of the struggle, a voice from the tent announced that the child was about to be born. The air filled with a mixture of hope and fear. Leah closed her eyes briefly, asking God to intervene with mercy. She remembered her own labors, the intense hours, the moments when life hangs by a thread. She knew every birth is a miracle, but also a battle. Every minute felt like an eternity. Finally, the baby's cry echoed through the camp, a sound that spread like a ray of hope. But joy mingled with uncertainty. Rachel remained weak. The women emerged carrying the newborn, and Jacob approached with tears held back. Leah watched the scene from a distance, thanking heaven for the new life. Yet a restlessness remained within her, as if something more was about to be revealed. Inside the tent, Rachel asked to see the child. Her strength was fading, but she longed to hold him. When she finally had him in her arms, she uttered a name that reflected her sorrow: Benoni. Leah shivered at the sound of that grief-filled name, for she understood it was born from a heart utterly exhausted. Sometimes names carry stories deeper than words can express. The silence around them was profoundly moving. Jacob approached, gently took the child in his arms, and chose to change the name to Benjamin, giving it a meaning of comfort and hope. Leah watched the scene, understanding that this gesture was meant to bring healing to the moment. Yet when the women stepped out of the tent, the camp learned the truth. Rachel had passed away. Leah felt a blow to her soul, not out of rivalry, but out of humanity. The story was shifting once again. The news spread quickly through the tents. The silence that followed was profound, as if even the wind had stopped. Leah felt her heart tighten. Rachel had been her rival, yes, but also her sister. She remembered shared moments, arguments, difficult glances, and still the loss touched her sincerely. In that moment, she understood that some stories do not end with distance, but with compassion. Jacob was heartbroken. He held little Benjamin with a mixture of love and grief, while the rest of the family watched in respectful stillness. Leah, standing a few steps back, felt a new sense of responsibility. The household needed stability, and the children needed guidance. Even if she had not been the favored one, she knew she had to become a quiet pillar during this transition. Sometimes strength rises when life calls without warning. The place where Rachel was laid to rest became forever engraved in the family's memory. Jacob set up a marker to honor her, and then they continued their journey. Leah walked in silence, watching her children process what had happened. Some were confused, others were sad. She gathered them with tenderness, reminding them that God was still caring for them. In times of grief, a mother's voice can steady even the most fragile heart. As they continued toward the next stage of their journey, Leah reflected on everything she had lived through. Her story had been marked by comparisons, silence, and long seasons of waiting. Yet in that moment, she understood something profound. God had used every chapter, even the painful ones, to form in her a strong character. Sometimes wounds become doors to a maturity that cannot be reached any other way. The family arrived at a new settlement, and everything began to reorganize. Jacob, shaken by the loss, leaned more on his children and on the responsibilities now resting on him. Leah, quietly and naturally, began to take on a more visible role in caring for the household. She no longer saw herself as someone pushed aside, but as a woman whose worth had been refined over time. That season marked a new beginning for her. As the days passed, the household slowly adjusted to Rachel's absence. The children searched for answers, and Jacob, still grieving, did what he could to preserve unity. Leah watched everything with a renewed sense of responsibility. She did not try to take her sister's place, but she did seek to hold the home together with the strength she had always possessed. Sometimes duty grows when life changes without asking permission. Leah's older sons displayed a strong character, reflecting the journey they had walked together. They respected her deeply, recognizing how she had remained steady even when affection had not been on her side. In them, Leah saw a future filled with hope, leaders, protectors, men capable of building a family. That certainty gave her peace, as if she were finally seeing the fruit of years of quiet devotion. Even so, the atmosphere between Leah's sons and Joseph sometimes carried moments of tension. The children had grown up with different stories and hearts shaped by experiences they did not share. Leah tried to mediate without drawing attention, guiding them with words of wisdom. She knew rivalry can become the root of greater conflicts, and she prayed for God to keep their hearts united. Peace within a family is always a continuous effort. With the settlements becoming more stable, Jacob began organizing his life with greater clarity. He assigned tasks to his sons, distributed responsibilities, and established new spaces for the growing family. Leah, through her daily routines, found her place within that order. She did not seek prominence, but she no longer lived hidden as she had in the early years. Her presence became a point of balance, a quiet lighthouse that held more weight than others realized. Over time, Jacob began to look at Leah differently. It was not the romantic love she had once desired, but a deep recognition. He saw her as faithful, steady, and essential to the structure of their home. Leah did not seek compliments. Her heart had learned to find stability in God. Even so, sensing Jacob's respect stirred in her a long-awaited peace. It felt as though a long shadow was finally beginning to fade. In the days that followed, the family's dynamic shifted. Leah noticed Jacob approached her more often to consult decisions or share brief moments of conversation. It was not an intense closeness, but a respect that had not existed before. She received these gestures with humility, aware that her story had been far from easy, yet confident that God had seen every step. It was recognition that came slowly, but it came. Meanwhile, Leah's sons grew into their responsibilities. Reuben, as the eldest, showed a natural leadership that influenced his brothers. Leah watched with gratitude as each one found his place, not through competition, but through the necessity of supporting a large family. Though the household still carried wounds, there were also signs of restoration. Sometimes time heals what words cannot reach. In the midst of this new stability, Leah found small moments for herself. She walked along the edges of the pastures, breathed the fresh dawn air, and meditated on God's promises. She knew not all of them had been fulfilled in the ways she once imagined, but she understood heaven had never abandoned her. Those quiet moments were like balm, strengthening her spirit for the responsibilities of each day. As the months passed, Jacob began reflecting on his story with a more mature perspective. His impulsive decisions, Laban's deceit, the rivalry within the household, all took on a different meaning now that the pain had softened. Leah noticed this change in him. He was no longer the man who saw only Rachel. He had become a responsible father, a more conscious leader, and a husband who better understood the value of every member of his family. One day, as the camp prepared to move forward, Jacob spoke to Leah's sons with a particular firmness, acknowledging their value and their role within the family. Leah listened from a distance, feeling a tightness of emotion in her chest. Years had passed in which her efforts were invisible. Now she watched her constancy bear fruit. It was not the ideal love she once longed for, but it was a restored dignity, woven through patience and faith. The journey continued, and with each new camp, Leah found new reasons to give thanks. Not because her life had been easy, but because she had learned to interpret every season as part of God's care. She watched her children help one another, heard their laughter mixed with serious conversations, and realized that her story, though difficult, had produced good fruit. Sometimes purpose is revealed in the faces we accompany. On quiet nights, as the fire crackled and the camp rested, Leah reflected on the path she had walked. She remembered the insecurity of her early days, the shadow of comparison that always followed her, and how God had responded with unexpected blessings. Her heart no longer sought to be at the center, but to be faithful in what belonged to her. That transformation was her greatest victory. Over time, Jacob's sons began to establish clearer responsibilities, and Leah watched her boys make important decisions. Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah were growing into natural leaders, each with his own unique strength. She understood that her legacy was not only giving birth, but also guiding, correcting, and accompanying. A mother does more than give life. She shapes destinies through her quiet example. But amid those developments, Leah also saw signs of conflicts that could grow. Among Jacob's sons, especially those of different mothers, tensions appeared that required wisdom. Leah prayed that her children's hearts would not harden, knowing that envy can become a deep root. She had learned that love does not always prevent fractures, but it can walk alongside those who experience them. One day, Jacob approached Leah to speak with a sincerity he rarely displayed. He thanked her for her steadiness, her strength, and for having held the family together during difficult times. Those simple yet sincere words touched a part of her that had been silent for years. They did not erase the past, but they healed something within. Sometimes a late gesture can still bring peace. The household continued forward, and although tensions remained, Leah felt her heart was firmer than ever. She no longer lived from comparison, but from a new understanding. God had woven her story with a purpose no shadow could erase. Sometimes healing arrives slowly, like a sunrise pushing through clouds. But when it comes, it fills everything with unexpected light. In her quiet moments, Leah remembered how everything had begun. A wedding marked by deceit, a love that was never hers, tears shed in silence. Yet she also saw what God had built through it all. Strong sons, a sustained family, and a heart that learned to love without demanding anything in return. How often do we walk through life hoping to be seen, unaware that heaven has already embraced us long before we noticed? Leah understood that her worth did not depend on Jacob or on the circumstances she had lived through, but on the gaze of God, the one who never left her behind. He had heard every cry and responded with blessings greater than anything she imagined. That truth remains for us today. When we think no one recognizes our effort, God is already writing a new chapter. Heaven sees what others overlook. That is why Leah's story is not just an ancient account, it is a mirror for those who love quietly, fight without noise, and wait without guarantees. Her journey shows that God honors faithful hearts and transforms wounds into purpose. If you have ever felt that your love was not returned, that you gave more than you received, remember this: God can bring something beautiful even from your most hidden tears. Today I ask you, what part of your story needs that same hope? If you have loved without being seen, if you have served without recognition, God sees you too, just as He saw Leah. May the Lord strengthen your heart, renew your strength, and give you peace in every step. Leave us a comment telling us where you're watching from, and share your prayer of the day so others can be blessed. Thank you for supporting this space.